Hello and welcome to another episode of Top Deck, the series where we take a look at some of the leading TCG deck lists. So this time we have Billy's deck list from the recent Poole regional that went over last weekend. So this is a Gem Knight FTK build, but it's a little bit non-standard. We got a cool spicy engine within this deck. So as per usual, we'll run through the deck, go through the rounds that he played, and then Billy's not coming on for a chat this time around. So thankfully we got some comments through third party on Facebook, so we've managed to get some questions through to Billy on this deck. So we'll start off with the deck list. So triple Lapis, triple Tourmaline, triple Armadillo, triple Obsidian, triple Lazuli, double Crystal Rose, triple Block Dragon, triple Rescue Rabbit, one Elemental Hero Prisma, so a little bit more unusual, but this allows you to essentially copy the name of one of the other cards by sending a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. And then 3 copies of A Hero Lives, which lets you special summon the Prisma out from your deck just by having no face-up monsters. Then 3 copies of Unexpected Die, triple Desires, triple Gem Knight Fusion, and triple Brilliant Fusion, rounding up with a Foolish Burial. For the extra deck, a little bit reduced Gem Knight count that we have here compared to what we normally see. So 1 Lady Brilliant Diamond, 2 Master Diamond. This is sometimes a 3-of that we see, and this is also normally a 3-of that we see, is Lapis Lazuli. Now these aren't necessary, it's not necessary to run these at 3 in order to enable the FTK, which is why he's gone with 2 and 2 for this. Then the 1 Zirconia, 1 Seraphonite, and 1 Prismora, which is a really good bait for different things. Then 1 Link Spider, 1 Mrs. Radiant, 1 Proxy Dragon, obviously 2 copies of Phantom Course, 1 Curious, and 1 True King of All Calamities for those times when you're not able to get the full FTK off and you just want to wall up for the next turn and then push through with masses of very strong bodies that you do actually generate from the extra deck. For the side deck, 3 copies of Kumongous, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, double Effect Veiler, and 1 Droll Knockbird. This would ideally have been the 3rd Veiler, but unfortunately he wasn't able to get a copy available at the time. Then 3 copies of Called by the Grave, and finally triple Twin Twisters. So that rounds it up for the deck itself. For the rounds that Billy played, round 1 he went against True Draco and lost this one 1-2, going second in game 1. Essentially, he attributes the loss to his opponent ending on Order or Erupt in games 1 and 3, which is really hard for the deck to deal with, especially if you don't see the Twin Twisters as an out to it after siding, so that must have been pretty rough for him. Round 2 against 60 card Lightsworn, he went 2-0, even though he went second in game 1. Round 3 against Pendulum Magician, another 2-0, also going second in game 1. Round 4 against True King Dino, he went 2-0, going first in game 1. Round 5 against Invoked Mech Knight, he went 1-1, so a draw from this round, going first in game 1. Round 6 against 60 card Lightsworn Dinos, he went 2-1, going second in the first game that he played for the match. And round 7 against True Draco, he went 2-1, going first in the first game for the match. So that's the rounds. Then I pinged across a couple of questions, or a few questions, over to Billy. So here's what he gave back to me. So I asked him, first of all, obviously, about the hero engine, because this is not something that we see in a typical deck. It does allow you to access some cool stuff, so I wanted to know his opinion and why he decided to run it. He liked the fact that Prisma was able to dump Lapis to the grave for cost, so you wouldn't be able to use Ash in order to stop this. If you don't know, Lapis is just the normal one, which allows you to then go into your Lapis Lazuli much more easily with your Prisma here. And then he also said that A Hero Lives essentially acts as an additional 3 copies of Die. However, obviously the advantage of A Hero Lives is you need to control no face-up monsters, so if your opponent does find a way to snow you or to ultimate conduct you, then A Hero Lives is still playable at that stage, which is quite a cool thing because you wouldn't be able to do that with Die, and then you can use your face-down targets for your fusion summon with Fusion or something like that, which is pretty cool. Prisma also being a light enables some interesting Seraphonite plays. Even drawing Prisma, he said, can be fine, because you can normal it and use it as a Gem Knight, or just fuse it off for the Seraphonite. As for the other things that we see in the deck, so typically if you're not running this engine, because we haven't seen it before. Some other players have been playing things like Drag Down into the Grave in order to remove hand traps, or would even be considering Called by the Grave within the main. So he opted to decide that and just play more cards within the deck that can bait hand traps, so the deck can often play through 1 or 2 disruptions. Billy didn't really think that it was necessary to main things to take stuff out of your opponent's hand. To some extent, the Hero Lives and Desires are used in place of them because your opponent wants to ash these, so they're really good baits for that. As for the non-FTK side of the deck, so in the extra deck, he's obviously got this Prismora that's available to him. It's used to bait a lot of negations. For example, he said Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. Due to Prismora being a thunder rather than a rock, it also helps with some curious plays that you can work through. Because you need them to have different types, but the same attribute. And even if the FTK fails, Gem Knights are really big, and they're generally big enough to attempt to attack for game. You know, you've got stats of 2450, 23, 29 here, 29 for the Master Diamond, and actually 34 for Lady Brilliant Diamond, so some really strong stats within your Fusion Monster lineup. Then also, if the FTK fails, another option that you have is obviously True King of All Calamities, which is fairly easy to make because you have Master Diamonds and Block Dragon and stuff like that. Seraphinite, he says, is generally underrated in the deck because it can be used to resolve multiple Armadillos or Crystal Roses and things like that. And it's also a fairy to allow you to go into Curious a little bit easier. Some of the issues that the deck has, he says it basically just dies to any floodgates, so things like Imperial Order and Monarchs Erupt, so he's got those Twin Twisters within the side to help him get through those. Changes that he'd make, the main deck is pretty much how he wants it to be. With the current way that it is, but obviously inside he wants this draw to be a 3rd Veiler. Then for his siding strategy, so this is sort of a general way that he would side for the deck. He says, ideally I would have had access to Ash or Evenlies, but unfortunately this is kind of designed as a budget sort of deck, so he didn't have the money able to access those at the time. So typically he'd side out the Hero Engine of just these 4 cards, and sometimes siding out a 3rd copy of cards that he only needs to see 1 of, so things like the Armadillo, the Rabbit, stuff like that, the Block Dragon, or the Desires. For going first, his general strategy was put in the 3 Called by the Grave so that you're more protected from hand traps, and then potentially put in a small hand trap lineup, depending on what you're facing obviously, because some of these are less viable against certain matchups than others. If he's going second, then he'll play 2 Called by the Grave, because again it's the sort of card that you don't want to see in multiples, generally, because you don't expect to be going up against multiple hand traps that are really going to be an issue. And he would also play a combination of Kaiju and hand traps depending on the matchup. So, you know, sometimes you need to be able to push through some negates, so you bring the Kaiju for that. For a lot of things, currently he prefers Ghost Ogre to Veiler because it essentially just manages to help you get that little bit extra advantage in the game, and also, you know, you can stop things like Electromite, which is really good as well. For his matchups, he says that going first matchups are basically the same whether you're siding in or out stuff. You hope that they don't have a hand trap, and you have Called by the Grave for it if you do run into it, which essentially makes the going first matchup the easiest matchup if you do have something that stops a hand trap. The hardest matchups are decks that build a board of negates, which is why he ran a lot of starter cards to bait them out, and it's also probably why the Kaiju engine is pretty nice for that as well, being able to stop those negates from interrupting you during your turn. He also said that Invoke can be a serious issue due to the high amount of hand traps and recurring Alistair Invocation each turn, so essentially they're always going to be able to negate something, and you don't want them to be able to drag the game out because you're trying to get that FTK in pretty much as early as possible. I asked him if he would play the deck again. He said probably, even with small hits, for example Brilliant being banned or having Lapis Lazuli put to 1, the deck still functions as a whole. Hopefully there won't be any hits though, as he's been working on the deck since the announcement of Phantom Courts in the OCG. As for shoutouts that he'd like to make, he wants to shout out YGO TCG Bournemouth, and obviously Denglong, which is his favourite card. The name of the team that he played in is South Coast Gaming, so big up you guys, and thanks very much for sending over the deck list, Billy. Thanks for the third party, Ryan, getting through the messages from him. And as always, good luck in future events, and hopefully we'll see you again. Thanks for watching this episode of Top Deck. If you have any comments or suggestions that you would like to make, leave them in the comment section down below. Check out the description for details of how you can get involved in this series. You can enter by voice interview, or instead you could just send all of your information over Facebook Messenger. Anything like that will be absolutely fine. If you want to see anything in particular from the upcoming series, then be sure to get in touch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.